Okay, welcome to the final season of this board's meetings. We're in the end game for this board. So August 10th, 2023, calling this meeting to order. Could I have a motion to establish the agenda, please?
So moved.
And a second?
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain? And with that, we have our agenda established. Superintendent's report, Brad.
Great. Just a few things. Put it on your update this week as well, but new teacher orientation is August 21st at 8:30 at Northwood in the morning to welcome in any of our new staff members who are certificated. Also, the back to school barbecue lunch is August 28th. 11:40 to 12:25. So I'll have those in your board report. We just wrapped up day 3 of our 3-day leadership retreat today. Had Monday, and then yesterday we were at the Duwamish Longhouse and spent the day down there. And it was a great opportunity to really just be in a new space, really thinking about government to government relations and some of the other aspects. But had a wonderful 3 days. We've got the full leadership team ready to go. Some of the commentary was, especially the elementary team, just so nice to have the same 4 administrators back and without turnover there. So we're ready to go. A lot of excitement. From an HR perspective, Rosie Burns is here tonight. And help to answer any questions. But a couple of things you might notice on the personnel report and or in the consent agenda. Our transportation department, when Jay Little retired, they're doing some reorganization and they're going to have a transportation coordinator, not just a dispatcher and whatnot. And that's going to allow Patrick to be really more in schools and out on buses. And having a much more hands-on approach there. And then as we've rolled out cumulative, and some of the feedback we've received from staff over the years is needing more support from HR, not just payroll support, but when we're talking about going out on leaves and FMLA and some of those things, having greater support there to go along with Rosie. So you'll notice a couple of pieces there. We'll then start the meet and confer process starting next week with our facilities team, our administrators, and our professional and tech prop tech group. So we'll start that process and then bring forward probably won't make the August 24th agenda, but we'll bring forth any changes we have to compensation for that group in September. Moving forward, we'll start onboarding Ava Zane, our new student board rep next week. Asha and I have a half-day retreat with her to download lots of information, and we're looking forward to that opportunity. And then on an enrollment note, our elementaries we're up over, I think, 14 students as of now. We've finally kind of gone through our drops and ads. We have a few others. We have several other families who have contacted us, but with cumulative just going. So we're up in elementary, we're up in middle school, and we're up in high school. High school is a little trickier to tell because of FTE and head count, and we don't always know what the exact FTE will be. But right now we're trending up at all 3 levels in terms of budget. So we're excited about that. And that's afforded us the opportunity to actually add staffing back. So since July 1, we added 0.6, so 3 different positions back to the high school. We added 3 new elementary positions, 1 at Island Park for a 4th and 5th grade reduction. So we can get those classes. They were all at 28s and 29s, so we'll have those reduced down. We added a kindergarten section at West Mercer, which is going to alleviate both Northwood and West Mercer. And then we've added a 2nd grade class at Northwood. And so we're still looking at a few things, but it's looking really good right now. Average class size for kindergarten, just over 20 students. 20.4 students, 1st grade, just over 21 students, 2nd grade, 20 students, and third grade 23.8. So our averages are looking much better than they were before. And granted, that won't be every class experiencing that exact number, but we're feeling really positive with some of the changes and additions we've been able to make over the summer. So we do have a number of positions that are posted for that. And then maintenance and operations wanted me to pass along just a couple things. When we go to the high school this year, we'll definitely go through Crest. And if you want to go see the greenhouse sooner, you can, but the new hydroponic equipment that you might have seen on social media is really impressive over there. And the carpet installation in the pack and the new curtain. Tony was saying today, he never really realized how much the curtain really looked eggplant and not maroon, and the new maroon is stunning. And the new paint in there, and then next year we'll do all the chairs, but it's looking really nice in our pack. And so we continue our work on changing up the underground fuel tanks and looking at different solutions to upgrade there. And then the big lift in HR and business and now on the student side is cumulative, and moving away from our old system with Skyward. That has been a massive project. We looked at different options about doing that in the middle of a school year. And in the end, we decided that the disruption of families and students would be just too great. But the problem is, this is like the worst time to do it for business and HR. But they really stepped up and we're learning on the fly as we go through. But a big thank you to that entire team for sure there. So we'll get our second electric bus later on this month, and then look to possibly order 2 more coming up in the next cycle. So lots of exciting things happening there.
And we have the current infrastructure for charging is up to 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can do 4 without doing anything else. So we're good to go there at this point. So those are just some of the reports there. A few other things coming up in the agenda.
Can I ask one more facilities thing? I know you've mentioned, and I think it was the, Friday reports, but the wrestling room mats and the weight room, and there's been community outreach about weight equipment. Can you just talk a little bit of, I just feel like I didn't know that this was coming, even though I'm sure it was part of the plan.
So we redid the floor in the entire weight room. So we have a brand new floor in there with a much better surface.
And that was all safety.
That's all safety related. And just, it's almost like you need to bring up turf up to a place for it to be safe. Same thing with the equipment in there. So we'll continue to do upgrades there, but that new floor was really important to get that in.
And then the people fundraising, that's independent. I mean, that's not a foundation thing, but it's separate from, I know football boosters are taking a big lead on it, but
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One is, would you like board members to be at the back to school barbecue with the staff? Like last year we served.
Yeah, if you're available, love to have you to either serve or even just walking around talking to staff in a different way. We tend to have more people needing to serve, but if you want to be there, we would love to have you there. It is during the instructional technology day, and so it's kind of the breaking point of that day, and hopefully the weather tends to be nice. Hopefully it will be. And we won't be wondering if we have a contract or not. We actually have a contract. So that's a good thing. That'll be a little different.
Do we have cornhole by chance?
We can bring it out. Why not?
And one other question, with adding Ava to the board, was that the first time that we'll have 2 female student board reps, or did we have 2 female ones before?
The first 2 were both females. It might be the first time since then.
Yeah.
We'll be able to check the plaque here pretty soon.
Yeah,
We'll have them all up.
It's the first time since we can work.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, I think so.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move to 2A, Board Policy 1008, calendar.
You had a chance to see it preliminarily in June, and most of the dates are, we think, in pretty good shape. Where you left off with a discussion that you didn't quite come to a full decision on would be the December meeting. the December meeting falls on the first night of Hanukkah. And so there was some conversation from other school districts about whether or not they were changing that. Some have moved it to a Wednesday. And so you were going to kind of think about that. That's really the one remaining day, as I recall, that we needed to bring up, but you may see other things in there that you have questions on too, but this is for you to discuss.
How do folks feel about that? I think on that day, we will be welcoming the new incoming board members as well.
That is. Yes.
And swearing them in. Is there any? So we're well past certification of the election by December anyway, so there's no issue of moving it to a Wednesday at all from that perspective.
I think it makes total sense to move it earlier, just in terms of community participation. Like if people are celebrating the first night of Hanukkah with their kids, as people tend to do, like why have the meeting on a night that will exclude a lot of people from participating, from watching, and so forth.
We talked about moving it to the following week on Thursday to keep it on Thursdays. However, we do get a lot of concerts in that with some of our concert times, and so that gets tricky too.
And that's also right before break starts.
It
So
is.
we
Yeah.
tend to see people.
Yeah, let's just move it to the Wednesday. I know that's unusual, but.
I mean, because typically the meeting's the second Thursday, but I assume that's why we were looking at the first week originally. I think that makes sense. I don't have a strong, I mean, I think, to me, the equivalent as a person who practices Judaism and celebrates Hanukkah, to me, it's the same thing as like changing a meeting on Halloween. It's the same religious significance, but I certainly am not opposed to it if people would appreciate it. I mean, I just.
Plenty of notice.
Oh, it's certainly plenty of notice, and I just don't, what I get, I mean, there's always a conflict for something, so things I would much rather take a stand on things that are, you know, of religious significance. But again, I don't think it's a big deal, and there's plenty of notice, and it probably does matter to some people, but lots of things, there's always conflicts. I'm just worried that it's potentially opening a can of worms, but we can open that can of worms and just keep it a small hole, so.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I have no attachment to Thursdays. So, anytime that we can change it to a Thursday or a Friday, week before, week after, for any kind of significance, I am all for it. So,
I'm not, some of my friends are football fans, so like they might have. Like, I guess, maybe.
There's.
But I support moving it. I think it's the correct message and understand the concerns of line drawing, but I think for some it is culturally significant, and I think given swearing in of new members, I think you move to a Wednesday.
Good, that's right.
So we'll move that to the 6th. One notation, as many times as we've looked at this too, Michelle, on the winter break on that same line in December. I wish winter break went from 12/18 to 1/21, but it doesn't. So too, we've looked at this thing how many times? We see something new every time, but.
And then the other question, I think we were all okay with the linkages as defined. We had talked a little bit about some of these, doing it a little differently, but I think we combined a bunch of them in February as well, right?
When does the legislative session start? Is it later in January? And the closer we get to it, the less likely we are going to see them, and the less impactful I think it is for planning. That's just my concern, but.
Let's see it.
Last year it was the 9th. I don't see it or this year it was the 9th. I don't see
Right,
it.
I don't.
Oh, wait,
think
here's
sure.
24.
Apologies. do some digging and find that. You know, it's a short session, but I can't remember where they shortened.
I mean, we're gonna be doing work ahead of time. I just know that they often meet with other districts in the fall.
It looks like January the eighth.
I just saw it, yeah, I think so. I just saw it.
So
I am happy to reach out and see if they feel like that's gonna be really difficult. I've already been meeting with some, so I just know last year we had issues with it being so close to the session that it made it really challenging, so.
Right.
Since we're talking about scheduling, and looking ahead to the fall and to the revision of the board in December when we get our newly elected members, I would like to suggest that we add on to next week's schedule, next meeting schedule, to take a look at, short-term reorganization of board committee responsibilities. Because my schedule has been changing dramatically this fall. We had some other changes in board member availability, and I don't want to make a change now that will stick through, obviously, when we have our new board members, but I would like us to take a look at, if everyone is okay with that, to take a look at our committee responsibilities just between now and when we get our new board members on board.
And we've been getting lots of the principal advisory council dates, and we may not have them perfect, but Michelle's done a great job really working with our principals and others to get a lot of those dates, so we should have a pretty good handle.
Would we have them by the 24th, you think?
Actually, everything's confirmed.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I'm waiting
Okay.
on this to find out the venue for the PTA advocacy meetings.
Great.
I don't know if they're Zoom or in person,
Okay,
but everything else is confirmed.
Okay, so we can do that, picking and choosing.
Yep.
Next meeting.
all right, looks good.
Okay,
Right, we'll make those changes and get them on for the consent agenda for second reading unless we need to pull it for some reason.
that sounds great. Okay. Let's move on to 2B, communication, superintendent communication.
Great. So we've worked on updating the plan for next year. And so we'll start with the first kind of changes that I want to take you to, which is page 4. One of the things that we've been talking about as a cabinet is, you know, how do we get out into the community groups? And Ian's going to stay working with the Chamber of Commerce, and I'll continue with Rotary and some others. Aaron will continue working with the JCC and Boys and Girls Club. But one of the changes that we're going to push is Matt's going to really reach out with Eastside Fire and Rescue as the city makes that change to a new partner that we've never had before. He's going to do some outreach there using some of his background when he worked for the city of Kirkland and worked with the fire departments there. So he's going to try to forge a partnership there and really start to bring them on as a strong partner. On the, we're in conversations with the city. They have that Let's Talk platform. And so we're talking to them a little bit about some partnerships there and what are some common conversations that we may want to be part of. And so we're looking at a couple of those, and then going to kind of link a couple things. One is change initiatives. Certainly when you were looking for a new superintendent, feedback that you were given during that process, as well as expectations that I think you clearly laid out, is when we're looking at change processes that we're really intentional about that. And the one that comes to mind is the long-range facility plan. So on the back on page 11, I have an addendum spot there. I did not want to get out too far in front of you with what the communication would look like, because your next board meeting is really when you're going to hear for the first time as a board the work from last spring. So following that meeting and some of the direction that you may want to provide and input, then we'll have a whole communication plan on how we're going to engage community this fall. So that's why that's blank, but that's going to be a big piece of that change initiative and thinking about making sure that we're clearly communicating to all of our community members, certainly our schools, but We know that, when we start talking about bonds and the support from the community, it's so much larger than that. On page 5, I'm going to continue many of the superintendent listening sessions. We're going to do another budget roadshow, but it's going to be an HR and budget roadshow to all of our schools this year, similar to what we had done last year. But those are also great opportunities for listening sessions, but we'll continue those with our community groups as well. We've started we met a number of times last year with our realtors. And so instead of, we're going to formalize that and kind of actually have a superintendent realtor advisory going forward and really meet with them. Getting them together has been very beneficial. We're going to probably have 3 or 4 meetings with them again this year. And the bags that Ian had put together with all the information have been a huge hit with our realtors on the island. So we will also continue our engagement with Mercer Island Preschool Association, the JCC, the summer celebrations, making sure we have a presence in all of those spaces as a school district. We're getting our first niche or niche information. We're getting our first demographics back from that, and hoping that Ian will have a report for us coming up around what kind of responses we might have seen during the enrollment process. Were we able to drive families? And then for the second year in a row, we're going to tweak it a little bit, but instead of just surveying those families who are leaving the district, we're going to be surveying again the families who came to the district and why did they choose us? What was their experience during the enrollment process? How did they hear about us? What are factors that they're going to expect to see from us to stay here? So we're going to have some targeted conversations and do some work there. We're going to be on reaching out in terms of local television, capitalizing on our opportunity with our band and some other groups. Yesterday, Joe Bryant was on New Day Northwest with some other teachers. If you saw that clip with a little game show type of thing on guess the price of back to school supplies. But anytime we can get our staff and faculty and most importantly students out there in the greater Puget Sound community, I think it's a great thing. On page 8, we consolidated many of our calendars. We're trying to get much more efficient, really, not just for ourselves, but our community groups who rent our facilities. It's been a bit of a cumbersome process, a bit of a guessing game as to, does my group pay this amount or this amount? And so we started meeting with the PTA last year, and then Ian and Rachel Hood, who coordinates our calendars, they're really coming up with a process that is a lot easier for everyone to understand. So we know where our buildings stand, where the spaces are, so our community has greater access when they want those. So that's going to be a big piece. And then obviously we added the cultural calendar this year to go along with our student calendar to keep us mindful and keeping our families in mind when we're planning events. So those are some of the bigger changes. Nothing, huge. The goals are still intact in terms of what we're trying to accomplish as a school district, to be in alignment with you all, and also just really promote the district and ensure that everyone has that great sense of pride in our great community. So I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah. I really love the cultural calendar.
Great.
I wonder if we can make it accessible more to the community. It's a great, something I would love to put on my fridge, right, like a magnet or something, but these are little flags I think would be really powerful to educate us.
Great. We had the same designer who did our annual report last year. She helped us redesign our calendar altogether. Our old one, it definitely looked like an Excel spreadsheet, I'll be honest. Probably not something we wanted up on calendars when other families came to visit you to see what they have. So we spruced that up a little bit, and that's for that. But great idea with magnets, maybe some other ways we can publicize it.
You're not saying a magnet, you're saying a nice glossy thing. You can.
It's like a magnet, but if you're giving out things, from the district.
What?
But Richard.
Well, they're just
Oh,
like
the
a
floppy.
little postcards. Yeah.
But if we're giving out things from the district, instead of saying just MISD, something, then these things could be more useful for me. and just a logo or.
Speaking as an environmentalist, I have to say I prefer a recyclable, colored but recyclable sheet of paper that I can put up with my home magnet, rather than have to throw out a sheet of magnet stuff every year. But I did want to say, I love the cultural calendar, and I also just really love the deliberateness with which you and your team have tackled this task of, you know, sort of modernizing our communications. Like, I really feel like we can hold our head up now. Like, I'm still, because of the superintendent search, I'm still on a bunch of like email lists and stuff and get notifications from other districts. And I think we are in like the top 5th percentile now in terms of how high quality our communications are and how frequent and everything. We're killing.
Since one, can I add another thing? But in addition to that, I actually would like to see it also more simplified. You know, I read a lot of reports that says that really us, Seattle, other school districts, the way that we communicate to the community is at like an 11th grade level of text, which, you know, as you know, we should kind of lower it to be more inclusive. So if we can think about the next level is how do we simplify the content? How do we make sure that there are like like if we can translate it to Spanish or Chinese, those kind of things that are predominantly part of our community, that would be the next level as we're thinking of how to continuously improve.
Yeah, I'm impressed with the LinkedIn focus too. That'll be great for recruiting, and so I can see that value. I think this feels like a corporation doing its marketing plan. So
I keep
kudos
saying,
to Ian.
there's never been more competition for education than right now.
Yeah.
And we can't underestimate that.
One other point, I guess, as we think about the long-range facilities plan, we should also think about the transportation levy that we want to do and the buses along that. We'll have to build up understanding and support for the eventual levy there. And hopefully we can dispel rumors that we only communicate when we need money. And this has been a plan in the making for multiple years now that is going on. Okay. Anything else? Should we move on from the communication plan? Any other? All right, so let's move to 2C, proposed revisions to board policy enrollment of non-resident students.
So we don't have any real changes since you saw it the first time. This is really just making sure that our policy and the interlocal agreement are in sync. And then we can move forward with official enrollment of families who are part of our city and not just our school district. So happy to take any questions, but we didn't have any substantial changes from last time that were requested.
Okay, and if there are no questions, could I get a motion to approve the revisions to the non-resident enrollment plan?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
I
Against? And abstains? So that passes 5-0.
Have we had any enrollments yet? Potential?
Yes,
Great.
they're kind of, they're waiting there. I'll get an update on that on August 24th, but we've had definite inquiries, and the city manager was quite surprised with the response. I think I might have shared that in June with how many families or staff members from the city that were actually very interested in the possibility.
I'd also be curious about entry points in terms of, I mean, it seemed like naturally, you know, for those that are entering a new school level, but I would just be curious.
Where they
like, I think it would be a particularly strong testament if there were those that like are enrolling, you know, sort of mid-school.
Great. It has been interesting just in general, outside of this particular issue, quite a few high school students enrolling, not just ninth grade, just families who have come and, you know, kids in all grade levels in our high school, which is, I find surprising just given the demographics and everything that we've heard. So that's been interesting to see. So we'll collect a lot of that information.
Do we know what do you collect the info if they moved here or if they're transferring here from another local school?
We can definitely parse that out by address, absolutely.
Yeah, especially if they're coming in mid-school year, right, in kindergarten, and must have transferred school, yeah, interesting. Well, that'd be nice. We'll certainly need to improve how we deal with transfers in the middle of school year and make everybody belong and feel welcome, as we've heard in the past as well. So I think that'll be another good effort. I will say, it was, again, I picked up Ann Fillmore's package she had sent us in, back in June, right? So it's preparation for this board meeting. I was reading through them again, and it's super interesting, the feedback from the students, from the seniors. I mean, they've all laughed, but their feedback was great around. It was real interest around a sense of belonging and sense of inclusion was important throughout, all the grade levels. But it also struck me for new students entering in our school district. Yes.
One of the things that Nick and the team is doing is really trying to put more emphasis back into Key Club and some of the clubs that was part of their mission, almost like the web in the middle school where everyone belongs with the 8th graders and the 6th graders, and kind of fell off with COVID and some other things, but they're going to really reinvest in that for our new students who are coming in. And so hopefully we'll see some dividends on that.
So thank you. I think it's been approved. Any other questions, thoughts? So we move to 2D, governance commitment, proposed revisions to board member compensation, first reading.
I will turn that over to Directors Lurie and Dave.
Okay, well, Deborah and I met, and I think we were looking around at other school board, other school districts to see what they did with their compensation policy. And it's really tied to the RCW. So there's really nothing that we can really do to it, right? But it's really how maybe clear we do our policy. And so the first paragraph is very consistent and similar to other school districts. And then we add a little bit in the second paragraph to clarify the reason why we can't fix our own compensation because it's fixed by, it's laid out in the RCW that we only get $50 per day. And then the third paragraph that we talked about was kind of redundant, right? And so we decided to take that out because in other school districts, they do not have that. And so it didn't add anything to it, and it was kind of a given. So we just decided to take it out to make it a lot more clear and clean.
And also the purpose behind it is, it is very much an equity issue that people shouldn't have to justify taking the funds that should be set aside. The district can rely on what's going to be taken much more. It isn't, there's no judgment as to who takes it and who doesn't. And, people then are free to do whatever they wish with it. If they want to turn around and donate it to the school foundation or Booster Club, or I'm sure we all make those donations anyways, then certainly people are free to do that and encouraged to do it if they can. But this way it takes any of that judgment and kind of optional out of it. Obviously it's income, then there's tax implications, which is kind of a bummer, but I don't think it's overly significant. It's just not that much money. Recognizing too that, it does come out of our district budget, but I think it's important that I don't think any of us currently have young children that need childcare during meetings or have to leave work early and take time off. But I'm sure there are those that do and deserve to be compensated for that.
Or that would consider serving on the board if they.
I don't know if $50 for the day is gonna do that, but it's the idea. And no other public officials that I know of hesitate to take the stipend. I mean, city council gets $200 a month, and I don't know that it's optional, but I believe they all take it or get it. I don't know how it's done. And then with the way that we thought would be the easiest to do, so that we're not all kind of waiting till the end of the year, is if we get the compensation claim form that's on the agenda as well, with a drop-down menu, and you know, we could receive it with the regular meeting, everything that's like full board meetings, so regular meetings, exempt meetings, in there that we all attend. And then obviously if you weren't able to be there, you just take that off. And then people are free to add on whatever else they want. So if you go to a PAC meeting and wish to claim it, then that kind of puts a lot more of the options. You know, and then if someone's taking it for childcare and they don't need childcare, then they can choose not to take it for that time period. I mean, there is a maximum, what is it, 4,800 for the year?
For the entire year.
Yeah, for the entire year. So it's not like, you know, if someone goes to 12 things in a year, it's not. So it then puts some more subjectivity. It adds some subjectivity in it, which I think we thought was a good balance.
Sorry, I'm just maybe not seeing the correct form. Oh, no, I found it.
Yeah.
When would we start, if we approve this, when would we start using this system? Just start using it right away?
It could start as soon as you've enacted it. Michelle, you've done a lot of, you were keeping up with the forms, so you revised forms. Anything that you want to add? I know that you were doing some work behind the scenes in terms of the forms. I know you had pointed out when in discussion before this meeting that without that final paragraph, we may not have a reference to one of the forms or whatnot, but anything you want to add in terms of the forms you were creating or pieces there?
I talked with Matt about that, he didn't have a concern. So
Great.
if that's eliminated and we saw the legal reference, there's no problem there.
Great.
I don't know if you guys want to discuss what I added for the drop-down menu.
It's great.
In terms of the activity.
Yeah.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Great, yeah.
I love this. Like since joining the board, I have felt like this process was weird and awkward and made people feel weird and awkward. And I feel like this is the step towards making board service more accessible for people. And it's very understandable. And it's like, yeah, nice job, everybody.
And so one of the reasons that we also took out that third paragraph was that it was going to operation, right? There, like the policy,
Yeah.
and then the operations, how we do it. And so, so I think, you know, it's, we have right now a waiver. And I think it's kind of, basically, if you don't claim, you're waiving it because you have that school year to claim or not, right? And so it would be best if maybe we get it, either probably like for October, we get it the first meeting, or you can just send us an email at the very end, you know, that you shoot to all the board members, this email, and then I don't think there's any requirement for wet signature or for like, so that's something I would like to ask about. It was sent to us as an email as a reminder, and we filled this out, the board signature. Does it have to be printed out, signed? Can it be a digital signature? It would be easiest if we can do a digital signature.
We use digital signatures all the time when we're approving things across the district. And so there would not be a barrier there.
Okay. If it just can be sent out to us with a digital signature from us, that would be fine.
Like if we just get, like if you can send it out every month, at the end of the month without, or with, you know, like the regular meetings on it. I mean, do we just?
No, that would be what would be the best way to, of operation, like what you just send out the information to us?
Or is it on us to?
Or it could be.
meetings and just
It could be on us, it could just be available somewhere on, you know, our board information, and we can just also download it and do it.
I kind of feel like this system can kind of run by itself, you know what I mean? Like without making extra work for anyone, although maybe like a quick little reminder for those of us who are kind of like absent-minded, like these are the dates of the meetings this month. here's the link, in case you lost it since last month, here's the link if you want to claim for something like that, but maybe not be too much to ask. Yeah, I'm so excited about this.
Because I think the way the form's designed now, you would select, for example, regular meetings, you'd select the regular meeting and then you'd input the date.
You can put the dates, right? Yeah.
Yeah, good reminders.
Yeah, and also I think the community needs to know that the budget for each board member is always built into, you know, the compensation. I mean, it is written in law, right? So it is part of every school district budget. And so, so it's not like anything extra that we are getting now.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it comes from the local levy as well. So that's good to know. So it doesn't take away from general education in that sense. That's local levy. Yeah, and I appreciate the expiration timeframe, August 31st as well, being very clear as to when this needs to be done by. That's useful, and it in some ways eliminates the need to have to continually send in a waiver form as well. If that's what you want to do. So in terms of reminding people, I guess it'll have to be part of board onboarding, new member onboarding as well. So that's fine. I don't remember if we ever did that before. We weren't just upfront with this, I think.
I think there's been several years I haven't signed a waiver.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever signed
Yeah.
a waiver.
I think I listed it the first.
Well, I was thinking the compensation form should be available to board and onboarding at that point.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this all looks great. How do we enact this? This is just for discussion. So we're doing this as first reading. Do we want to put it on consent agenda for next reading?
Sounds great.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your work on that. It looks very nice.
We spent an hour.
Well, don't underestimate the cost of research. though.
Well, we both did kind of come in, but and our ideas mesh very quickly, so.
And clarity of the LCWs and the funding and all that. No, well, none of us did that research prior, so thank you.
Yeah, I wonder if they have the RCW like amount for other elected officials that low. It also speaks to the value of education.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, city council's about the same. The state legislature just gave themselves raises, I think the last session, which.
They work very hard. I don't begrudge that.
No. They work, I mean, when it was created, it was very much a part-time position, and it's very much not a part-time position anymore, and they are not well compensated for the amount of work and the fact that it's a year-round thing too now,
Right.
or at least to be effective.
Okay, let's keep moving on this session. 2E, communication and support to the board. Equivalency credit for high school courses.
We're going through a number of policies right now, updating language as we change positions or decided to have different people in charge. Equivalency credits are when a student can earn 2 graduation credits. They can't earn more than the 24. They still have to earn 24 credits, but if one course also serves as a fine arts and CTE, or a credit might be giving a student, clearing pathways for them. So we just had some cleanup to do here. There aren't any substantive changes here, but we've got a number of these we're going through. They're both administrative and board policy, but since this is a VP, we needed to bring it to you, but nothing's.
I had asked this question before, and so I'm just gonna ask it again in case anyone watching this meeting later is wondering about it. This process of applying for equivalency, is this something that an individual student would do for their one class that they're wanting to get that additional credit for, or is this something where it would be a cohort of students who all want to take a class and get some kind of credit for it?
It's usually, and you asked me that question and I had dual credit on my mind because I'm working on that policy too. This one is typically done by departments in the school. And it might be a group of students. So last year, we approved radio as a final. That had been a series of conversations over time with students saying, hey, you know, is this, can this be? And so sometimes it's students who are pushing educators to think about that. Other times it's a new course that we're bringing on and we say, can we make this a dual credit, or excuse me, a course equivalency? Can a student receive math credit for also taking something else? So sometimes it's a group of students. The ones where we get a singleton student is really when they're looking at dual credit, getting college credit and high school credit, and we're doing some of those, but this is more departmental.
Thank you.
And if a student needs an exception for some reason, you know, they're not quite there with a perfect match of credits, but they've taken reasonable courses, they can request an exception. Does that fall under this as well?
It's not so much under this, that comes underneath the more of the graduation requirement
Okay.
policy, with the graduation waivers, they call them. And we still have some latitude to waive certain credits, particularly elective credits. Because of COVID, we've been able to waive some of the actual core content. Though that's going to slowly, the Board of Ed still needs to take action, but I think they're going to ratchet that back from being able to waive 2 cores to 1. And then I'm hoping they leave it there because there are many ways that a student can demonstrate some mastery and whatnot. But the nice thing is we have changed to, you know, if let's say I pass my first semester of algebra and do a nice job, and then something happens to me in that second semester and I fail that second semester of algebra. If I then take the next course in the sequence and I do fine in the next semester of algebra 2, I can go back and still get that credit for algebra 1 without having to retake the whole thing because I'm still demonstrating mastery in the content area. So there are some sequences there that the state's made some changes to, which we've already made changes to approve as well.
That's great.
And I don't think you've shared, in other meetings, the good news about the college level classes.
Right, so our UW in the high school classes, as well as Central Washington and Eastern Washington, where we have some classes at the high school where students can get credit. The last legislative session in the spring, the legislature passed legislation and funding, and the governor approved it, that is now free for our students. So they used to pay $300 to $500 depending on the credits for those UW in the high school classes, Spanish, French. We have a chemistry class through Eastern Washington. Those are now free to our students, and that's across the state.
And are those classes they take within the walls of the high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
licensure.
So this is different from like marketing where we pay the $25 and.
This is
you
like,
get a
you
college
take the
credit?
class, like if
Right,
you're in
right.
Chinese, whatever, you don't have to pay the money and then you don't get the UW credit.
Right. There's a lot of business type programs that have the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where we get reminders to register for those.
Yes, and some of those, I'll check on that. That's a great question. I don't know how if those fall under this legislation or not. I hadn't even.
I mean, they're not $300 to $500. I think that they're 25, so it's much less
Yep.
impactful,
I'll
but.
take a look. Also do that.
And if we had some sort of. Like. I mean, I feel like I get these emails and it's like, oh, did I do that or did I not do that? Like, if we had some sort of like. System or timeline or something that would. Help us really take advantage, parents that aren't necessarily totally on the ball, take advantage of those opportunities, because they're really great opportunities. Really save some money for college and free up time also to take other things.
Also, Fred, what I'm hearing about early, what you just said, it makes me happy to hear that we recognize that students sometimes have challenges, and that when we think about how do we look at their journey, and if they just have a bump in the middle of the road, but at the end they gain mastery, how do we don't penalize them, but count them and all those kind of things. So do you know when we kind of look holistically at a student and say, hey, the student's about to, I have a student. I'm just like, holistically, do we look at a student and say, hey, they're on track to graduation, or hey, you didn't pass that. You're gonna be 2 credits or 1 credit behind. Because I heard a horror story over the summer in another school district where a student was missing 1 credit. And, the parent didn't know, or it's too late, and they weren't able to graduate. And so I don't know the story of the backstory, but it just sounds really horrible. Like sometimes it's too late, to kind of catch up. And so there has to be like summer planning and all that. So when do we kind of capture the students to do an overview of, if you take, the regular credits, you're not going to be able to graduate in time, so you have to take summer school.
I think this has been my greatest fear about the changes in the counselors that we've had in the high schools, because that's really the core, that's one of the core aspects of being a counselor is watching, okay, you finished your freshman year and who are all of the freshmen on my caseload, and now what have they signed up for in their sophomore year? And then particularly as those sophomores start to go to be juniors and juniors to seniors, we do the most extensive job between that junior and senior year to make sure, but sometimes that can be too late. And so how does that happen? But that's really the core, one of the core responsibilities of our counselors looking over the years. We've had some challenges over time. Sometimes it's with NCAA regulations. It's amazing what the NCAA governs and requires and what they'll approve as a credit versus not. And we had a student who is a D1 athlete, and there was questions about that credit, and we went through a waiver process this summer and went to battle for that student to make sure, and we got it all worked out. But it was an example of, there was some there was a class that the student took that we probably wanted to be a little bit more scrutinize it a little bit more earlier on. But those things we're trying to constantly manage. And then the other one is when the students, some of them have to submit grades multiple times because they might be on a wait list at the university. So moving to parchment and getting really up to speed with some of the transcript sending and receiving mechanism, that's really been important for us to get up to speed on as well. And Andrews has been a big piece of that parchment component moving forward. So Director Williams.
Yeah, this discussion, one of my recurrent nightmares, like perhaps many, is like the scenario that you described, being prepared for graduation and realizing that your credit's short. So it's something that at least in not my dreams, but my nightmares hit close to home. But I'm wondering to the extent to which it can be systematized, perhaps like at the state level or regional level, and at least the first screening that can be automated, to not have like the burden on counselors to flag. And maybe just because of the exemptions, it still needs a second pass by a person, but at least to try to decrease the workload and then think more systemically where there's efficiencies because there's state requirements that we could at least leverage that and, sort of plug courses in, and then it can have, caution warning signs for those that might be off track, or have a problem, as you said, not just with graduation, but with NCAA requirements.
Right, it's so confusing. I mean, my nephew went through that and he was D3 and it was like, no, you can't take this class because they're not going to accept it. I can't remember specifically what it was, and no one has any idea at all. And it would be great if the state would take it over, but I wouldn't hold my breath, but it does still happen. And I think there's 2 issues when you first told me about this. I think one is that school didn't allow the student to walk at graduation, which is outrageous and then they took the class over the summer, right? So they still got their diploma. I can't imagine that would ever happen here. I would hope that it would never happen here. And then also if there's a screening, I know counselors are so crazy busy in the fall and then early winter, but if it was right around spring break or right around there when things maybe calm down, I know you're planning, well, you're already planning for the next year, but can take a look at the juniors and say, hey, you're missing this, you should take it this summer, so you don't ever have that. I think the reason with the state, it would be challenging is, when you're running start classes appear on the kids' transcripts, Privet doesn't appear, so if you take it through another school or online through anything other than running start, it's not there, and then you're submitting, it's so complicated. I trust our counselors more than I would trust.
Well, nothing to say, but I'm thinking in terms of building software.
No, I hear you, yeah. I mean, it's frustrating that it's so complicated, but.
It's sort of like TurboTax,
Yeah.
you still have to make corrections, but right, you can run it through software to sort of flag like inconsistencies would be.
And maybe with our new athletic director position, that's something, at least with regards to NCAA requirements, and then I'm sure she'll know the students that are pursuing those, or at least we can help her know that students who are pursuing that.
There's a lot of our students.
What's a lot?
I mean, is this all cumulative now? So we'll have that burden as well. Sometimes to do this and that.
It will be a function of that, because that's where all the student management, that's where the official transcripts are and everything else, so. It will be impacted, or there will be an overlap.
And it's, correct me if I'm wrong, and I've just never been able to find it. Going through this process, and Skyward, you can look at every report card individually, but you can only see like the overall transcript if you request a transcript. You can't see an electronic version. Am I wrong?
Parchment allows you to request a unofficial transcript for free. It's a very quick process for the high school.
I don't even know what parchment is.
So on the high school counseling website, there's a few different ways to request transcripts. And then third parties can do educational verifications, but it's an online service that Fred mentioned earlier that we started utilizing so that we can offload some of the work for our counseling secretaries and our registrars. So rather than having to submit a form and then having to physically get the PDF and send an email.
Well, and a lot of times people just want to, like an unofficial, like, hey, what's happening?
And so-
And making sure everything's right. And then that way they can go through the process if there's an error somewhere or something's missing.
Correct. So when we upload transcripts at every semester through that process, families at any point can go in and request an unofficial transcript, and it will send them the latest transcript that's been uploaded in a matter of minutes.
And that's no
No cost for the
Fine.
unofficial.
well, but I don't think,
Yeah.
there's no person that's having to go do that.
No, it's all
Okay.
done through an automated system, and
Right.
so, as long as it can match the student to that transcript, it processes it automatically. In rare situations, for whatever reason, just based on name, if it can't match, it sends our counseling team a notification where they just have to manually review it and ensure that it's the correct transcript. But that's done automated, and then official transcripts are processed through that system as well.
I mean, it would be great at Island or Hour even, or wherever they think is appropriate, at the end of the year that they run that, and then, or maybe the beginning of the year, because then the spring grades will be in, and they can at least check it and make sure, and they could take it to someone and make sure they're, a check that, so things don't get dropped. Because I've heard some horror stories about, and here, and still that happens, and something's always gonna happen, but the response time and handling that as early as possible.
Is Parchment new? This is the first time I've heard.
We had it for 2 years.
2 years?
Oh,
Okay.
Is that our site?
It is on.
And it's on.
Use the search bar on the website. There, you can try type in transcript, it'll get you directly to that page, where it talks about whether you're requesting a transcript for a college application. If you're doing it for a college application, it's done through Naviance, because that's where we have I believe it's called the Common App process. So all of that's done through Parchment. But if you're a freshman through a junior and just wanting the unofficial or an official transcript, that's done through Parchment. And then even with students that transfer to other school districts can request transcripts and educational records through Parchment.
Wow, that's really nice. Wow, it's a nice update. Thank you. Okay, could I have a motion to approve the equivalency credits process?
So moved.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Against and abstain, so that passes with 5-0. How are we doing for recognition?
We do not have our athletic director here tonight for official welcome. She couldn't attend. Lindsay Blaine will join us in September when actually we'll start bringing some of our spring sports to the board. So she'll join us in September. For that, I did want to just quickly recognize our custodian and maintenance and operations team, though they're not here formally. We're kind of short a week this year in our summer, just because of how late we ended, the way the calendar fell. And even just 1 week really puts pressure on that team. But we have, we put a lot more into our grounds and maintenance. Our building custodians are getting the schools ready. They're looking great, but there's a lot of hours and hard work that goes into that. I'm just appreciative of the conditions they keep our facilities. Despite their age, they still run really well.
Thank you. We had no public input today, not that we don't appreciate public input. And as we talked about earlier, this is kind of still early in the season.
Preseason.
It's a preseason, that's something. So next week, or whenever, we appreciate the input we get from our public students, staff, and constituents as well. Let's move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the consent agenda? Aye. Against and abstain. And with that, we pass our consent agenda. Let us move to superintendent announcements.
I have shared enough. There you go.
Okay, and ledger report.
Just started to kind of plan the year. The General Assembly is the end of September. I'm going to appear remotely. It's hybrid this year. I didn't think I needed to fly to Spokane to do it. I thought remote was fine. The handbook comes out in a couple days, and make sure everyone sees that, and then kind of figure out the best way to go through that. So I'll go through it and kind of flag stuff, and obviously anyone's welcome to go through the entire thing if you want to as well. I met with, just based on last year's really successful collaboration with regards to special education and every part of the state speaking with one voice, I think is really effective. It turned out better than we thought it was going to, even at the last second. And then so addressing some of our concerns as in collaboration with other districts. I've gotten some feedback that I met with some of our representatives, and I don't want to attribute any comments to any specific one, but with where I said, what about the levy issue? Like, is this, what do you think? Is this something we can get kind of across the board? And even, at this point, it's really just looking to match what one district in the state already gets. And then also, but I was told, this year is not a good year because it's election year for the legislators, and no one's it's gonna be tough to get a tax increase. Even I was like, but it's not a state anyways. But that was kind of the feedback I got. It doesn't mean we don't do it, but it's also, and with it being a short session, do we set the stage for next year? And do we make the push anyways? And the feedback I got was, not that no one cares, but it's hard to say to some of the, more comfortable districts on the west side, we care that much about this amount of money when there's school buildings falling down on kids, in the smaller districts who can't pass bonds. So the idea was to go and collaborate with lots of districts and see if it could mutually benefit all of us. And so say, we need, the regionalization and the levy because of our higher cost of living, because of our higher needs for higher pay, and those things. And then you need the state to help with school construction more so than we do, even though I should be providing for everybody. But I think that I think it's so unlikely that the representatives in Eastern Washington would be able to vote against a measure that increased funding for school buildings that are literally falling down on kids because they can't pass bonds. So whether it's, getting the passage rate down to 50 or, whatever it might be, there's been no conversations about this yet. Or I think there are some in pockets, and I think PTA is reaching out kind of in the same way. And I spoke with Jennifer Flood and do we want to kind of come up with a strategy and see if PTA is on the same page in terms of the strategy. So that's just what is brewing here, not proposing anything at this point in time, but I thought that was interesting. We're focused so much on inclusion and equity, and we don't have the same needs. So why don't we really push the state to fund the districts based on what their highest needs are? Like I said, ours are money and to pay people, and theirs are, structural. So just throwing that out there for people to kind of start pondering, and see where we go from there. The good thing about it being a short session is, maybe we really have kind of a year to build some momentum in this, because I don't think it would be an easy process, but.
For capital gains, the newly enacted capital gains tax, my understanding is a lot of that is going, as you said, to smaller rural districts for construction. Has there been any discussion of how that money that is going to be collected, which would be shouldered a lot by members of our community?
We shoulder most of the tax burden.
If there will be, any opportunities, understanding that, each district is different, to receive some of that where it's prudent.
I don't know of anything, and I never believe anything until it actually happens with the legislature. So I don't know if Fred has more.
That's a great question. I received that same question from a community member in June. Did a little bit of research. Nothing has come out in terms of how that's going to be enacted or what that's the process on that. So I'm still waiting to see how they're going to manage that.
And that's not just school buildings, is it? Isn't it early education or early learning? Yeah. So there's a bunch of,
and it could be interesting, particularly to track, because it's sort of new funds in some ways that hasn't been decided how it's going to be allotted and what the most prudent thing is, and maybe something for the board at a later point to discuss whether something like that is something would be appropriate to engage a lobbyist to monitor and keep us informed in real time.
Right, and PPAs are having those same conversations about hiring lobbyists. So I think a partnership and collaboration could be really effective. That's how Seattle got their levy increases. They hired a lobbyist to take care of them.
And the fact that the capital gains funds have been collected, would like to know what it's being spent on. Okay, thank you very much, Deborah. This sounds like hopefully a small session, but hopefully beneficial for schools. And at least getting what we need in front of everybody so that the next session legislation can be enacted. So thank you for being super proactive. Let's move on. 7B, announcements, inquiries, and reports.
Yeah,
Dan?
if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few quick remarks. I'd like to take a moment to apologize for my behavior over the last few months. I acknowledge that my behavior created a difficult working environment for my board colleagues and for staff. I apologize to those individuals who may have felt disrespected by my words or tone. Though it was never my intent, I now realize that my intensity clouded my judgment and chipped away at my civility. Moving forward, I vow to work hard to do better and maintain a constructive working relationship with the community, staff, and board members. Thank you for your understanding and grace, and allowing for both moments of personal shortcoming and the promise of personal and permanent growth. Thank you.
Cam?
Well, I feel like I have to respond to Dan before I have. Thank you, Dan, for taking a moment to make that statement. I think, and I, personally for me, it kind of brings a little bit of closure to a couple of months of kind of, challenging upheaval. So it's nice to hear your statement, and it kind of creates a path for us to kind of move forward. So I appreciate you taking the time to make a statement. I have nothing to report.
Maggie, Tony?
Yeah, I have two items. One is that I'd like to propose adding another item to the next meeting's agenda, which is under board policy 1011, the process for addressing board member violations. I would like to propose that we add a discussion of whether a board member has violated the board's code of conduct with action to be taken if that is the desire of the board. And my understandings, it would be helpful in a second for this, so for anyone who.
I second.
Okay, next.
Thank you. And then my other item is much happier. I wanted to let people know that there is, there's going to be a new club or activity at the high school next year, which is a competitive cybersecurity team. Too late for my super cybersecurity focused kid, unfortunately he's already graduated, but it's something called Cyber Patriot, and it's kind of like a DI type of thing, and it's through the Civil Air Patrol, which I could be wrong, but my understanding is it's kind of like junior Air Force kids kind of thing, and it's purely defensive cybersecurity based. So basically in the challenges, you have to keep a business's data flow going for 6 hours while detecting and strengthening the businesses like firewalls and so forth against attacks that come in on kind of a regular rolling basis. And it's two parents in the community who have started this team, and they put together a summer camp to kind of train kids in how to do this. And by the 5th day of the camp, they were doing a full length competition event. So
Wow.
Very excited for that. And how do I know about this? Because the camp took place in my basement. But I'm very excited for kids who are into that kind of, computer stuff to have another option, besides robotics, probably in addition to robotics, and rocketry and stuff, to kind of like flex their cyber brains. So
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. Deborah.
I just want to let everyone know that I have accepted a position as one of the co-chairs of the Senior Activities Committee, which is part of the PTA for the high school. I think we all kind of try and steer clear from that type of thing, just so not participating, but in terms of leadership, just so that there's clear lines. But this was one where this is planning the senior party is the primary responsibility. So fundraising and planning the senior party, that's separate from the administration completely. And just, as a parent of one child who is a senior, I wanted to take this on. So if anyone has any concerns, or I don't think there's any conflict at all, but if anyone has any concerns, please reach out to me, and I'm certainly open to hearing any concerns.
I appreciate you, Deborah, for always thinking about kind of boundaries and our roles and how they don't mix with all the other things. But definitely, with your child being a senior this year, it totally makes sense. And I mean, the part why we're volunteering is to really be a part of our children's life. And I can't imagine a better way to plan the senior party.
How's the senior party funded?
purely by fundraising and students.
Right.
Who go, ticket sales, and no, there's no, I don't believe there's any school funding at all. And it's, I mean, there's coordination with the school in terms of dates and things like that, but it really is fairly separate. I'm actually learning how separate it is. So, and I think I have a great working relationship with Mr. Wold in terms of, those we've had parent principal conversations and we've had board member principal conversations, and I say relationships, conversations. And those lines are, at least to me, always clear. I think they are to him too. And then thank you, Dan, for this.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Oh,
Well, just quickly, actually, like Civil Air Patrol, like I was in Anacortes and they had an Anacortes street fair. And one of the booths was the Civil Air Patrol, which was the first time that I found out about it just, I guess, a couple months ago. And they were handing out education, like these paper airplanes that had like folding diagrams. That was super cool. So
Yeah,
like
I had heard the phrase Civil Air Patrol before, but I don't know what I thought it was, like spotting airplanes or something. I really didn't know anything about it, so.
Is that like the Space Corps? Is that what it's called? Space?
For like young people.
Okay.
The Space Force, yeah.
Sorry.
okay. Yeah, well, I'm excited about the school year starting and students getting back and board engagement continuing. So very happy about that. And that's all I have. So let's see. With that, I think we are ready to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will be adjourned.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Against and abstain. So with that, the first episode of the final season of this board is now concluded. Thank you very much.
In an hour and 16 minutes.
That's good. We should